Welcome back to segment number 6 of my Last Remnant 100% completion, New Game Plus, Hard Mode, with nothing carried over playthrough. We're going to start this segment by taking on the story battle of the Nest of Eagles. I'm actually going to do this fight twice. In the first fight, I'm going to show what I might call the classic version or classic approach to the fight. And what I'm going to do here is it relies upon looping Gay Bolg, which is why David is now leading a union. In order to loop it more than one turn, you need to have 80 AP in order to use it. The way that we're able to charge our AP up is through the equipping of the Baltaro set. I let David request that, and it is an accessory that restores AP based upon the amount of damage dealt. Since the Gay Bolg targets the entire battlefield, it does more than enough damage to fully replenish his union's AP. And so provided he is outnumbered on the following turns, there's a very high chance that we will get repeated uses of the Gay Bolg, at least enough to wipe out both sets of the mobs that appear in this fight. The boss unions will be sufficiently damaged through the couple of uses of the Gay Bolg that hopefully we'll be able to engage them and take them down without much hassle. But as you can see, just to play it safe, I do have my 2 healing, reviving unions on standby, so that if any one of us falls, we should be able to pick ourselves back up without too much issue.
hope I've grown stronger than before. Little by little, I'm becoming stronger.
Alright, so we're back and we're going to try this fight a second time using an approach that's more geared towards the team that I've put together for this playthrough. If you haven't already guessed, it pretty much matches up with what we used against the Ancient Dragon. Rush is back in the mix, and his squad is basically filled with Mystic Arts users, so he intends to use Blackout every turn, which is more or less similar to the game old. We're able to clear the battlefield in a single turn. He has the Baltaro set equipped, so he'll be able to recharge his AP. For the Blackout version he knows, which is Blackout 3, you have to have 85 AP to use it, but we'll be fine there with at least bypassing the very first turn. Again, just like Game Old version, we'll wait, then we'll march in on the enemies on the second turn, and then just repeat use of Blackout. The advantage to this approach is that you don't have to be outnumbered towards the end of the fight. You just need to have enough AP, and you have to have the appropriate commands all line up in Rush's Union, but that's not going to be an issue, so we should be able to use Blackout repeatedly, even once just the bosses are left. After this fight is over, the Aqueducts becomes available. We're going to enter that and exit. I've got a couple of things to show you once we get there, but for now we'll just wrap up this story fight, and I'll see you once we get to the Aqueducts.
Come on, let's kick some ass!
Sweet! This is just the beginning. Who wants to be my guinea pig?
Son of a... I need the other one! The other one!
So the reason I'm coming to Balok is just to show that there's a flag that trips as soon as you enter the Aqueducts. There we enter the guild in Balok just to show what units are available for hire. We're going to run over to Nagapur, set foot in the Aqueducts, and then set foot back out of it. And the tripping of that flag allows for the next tier of units to become available. So there might be some units that would be further along development-wise than what you've got at this point in the story. There's a couple that are certainly worth including if you are doing this at a lower BR. I chose Balok as the illustration because the unique leader Gao is available in there, and he's certainly a worthwhile addition to anybody's team. He starts and stays in the Hunter class, which is one of those classes that has the medic skill or trait. He has very well developed lotions. He's got great combat arts development, just a great unit to include. Does not make my team for this playthrough, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't be included in yours. Later on, he also gets a nice free weapon. Certainly worth including. So as you can see here, we were in the aqueducts for just a split second, took a step back out, we returned to Bayaluk. I'm going to enter the guild here and just show that that Gao is available. He does have quite a hefty price tag though, so if you're poor like we are, you certainly won't be able to afford him right off the bat. You may have to go harvesting stones or find some other means to include him. But after just pointing out that Gao is available, I'm also going to step foot in the pub, and the reason for that is to show that entering and exiting the aqueducts does not cause quests to disappear. There is a note that certain quests are not available after the aqueducts, and it does not mean that you can't enter it. It basically means once you start the story boss fights at the end of the aqueducts, that there's no going back. But you can set foot in, you can exit, and then you can wrap up all the missable quests that are still available on the first half of the game. So I'm returning to the aqueducts with the intention of changing one of my soldiers' default weapon upgrade paths. In this case, since I was asked to include a couple of soldiers in my team, one of them is Minuus. By default, he uses the Tabor's inline, and what I'm going to do is get a weapon drop from the Barbarossas. They have the very rare chance to drop Sagras Praetorius, which is again a higher tiered version of the Sagras, similar to what we did with Blocter. Once we reached Illusion and actually purchased a Sagras for him to request. Soldiers won't request anything on the world map like leaders do, but if you do get it as a drop in battle, or any weapon that doesn't require particular focus, they'll go for it just like another leader will. That being the case, I have to make sure that there's nobody else deployed that would be interested in it, which is why, say, Blocter is on the bench. But in this case, Minuus is the only one who uses large size axes, and so I just have to keep repeating this fight until I get the drop. It's only a 3% chance per target enemy, so there's a very low chance of doing it. You have to be fairly patient. In this case, I think I had to do the fight 4 times, which isn't all that bad considering it's only 3%. But once he asks for it, his line will change permanently. I'll be able to upgrade the Sagras eventually to the Executioner line. He will end on the Superlative version, but that's still an excellent weapon for any unit, actually. So it's going to make him, as a soldier unit, at least that much sturdier.
Me?
So we got the drop when we changed Minuus's upgrade path, but there's still a couple of tasks I'm looking to try to complete in this area. We're not going to complete the story part yet. We still have all the quests that are missable, that have yet to be taken care of. But while we're in here, assuming we don't complete the area, we can try to knock out a couple of guild tasks. I'm not going to do any of the tasks that require fighting, with the exception of that Barbarossa fight. I'm going to avoid all the encounters here. What I'm looking for is there's an excavation point where you can harvest weapon recipe 41, and what that is for is that once we've upgraded and obtained the Mermaid's Malice and turned that guild task in, the next upgrade is for the Demon Blade. And weapon recipe 41 is a substitution component that you can use to upgrade that much sooner. Otherwise, there's the other component that it stands in for is not available until a little later in the story. And so I should be able to get the Demon Blade fairly early in the second half. Just so happens though that even though I wandered through the whole dungeon, that excavation point was not available, which is unfortunate, but we'll make sure to find it before we complete the story portion when we come back in here. There's two other things to show, at least in this segment. At the very end of the dungeon there is a Mr. Diggs spot that you can save and potentially save scum, much like the spot in Numer Mine. You can harvest stones from there of greater value than anything that's available so far, and that harvest point has the potential to restore your digs, and so by now you've got enough skill with Mr. Diggs that there's a good chance you'll be able to get 100 stones without running out of digs with the addition of the Diggs Restores. Right there you saw that we got another Jorgen item, the Sword of Remembrance, and just like I was challenged to include a couple of soldiers, I was also challenged to include Jorgen. I don't normally include him in my party, not that he's bad, he's just not a character I particularly like, but I will take the suggestion, and so I'm going to include Jorgen. In that case, I actually want that Sword of Remembrance. I'm going to turn it in to get Warrior Jorgen. Does not satisfy the requirements for the Warrior Guild task. That's more of a translation error than anything. That's not the same as the warrior asked for there, but he is a fairly tanky unit, and I don't really have much in the way of any dual wielders in my party, so I figured he would be one of the more interesting options. So I'll pick up Jorgen. I'll show the harvest point here, and then we'll just teleport out of this dungeon.
Yes!
Alright, so there I've shown that you do get the digs restored, but I'm not here at this time to harvest stones. I just wanted to show that the location exists. Again, on the second half, after we complete this dungeon, it's much quicker to access that point. So if you're in need of money and you don't mind harvesting stones, that's really the most lucrative option available at that time. It's certainly very efficient since you can very quickly get to it. There's a teleporter right there to return to town and sell all of your findings, and then you can just come back in and fill up on stones. I'm going just a little bit further, still looking for that excavation point. Again, did not find it this time through. And then the last thing I'm going to do is point out there's that treasure chest right before the point of no return. I'm not going to open it. There's a couple of folks that might potentially ask for the sword that's inside, which is the defender. That would be Semri, and eventually another addition to the party. But I don't want either of them to have it, and I don't really want them to harass me about it. So I'm just going to leave that treasure chest where it lies, and then at this point just return to the previous area and take the teleporter on out of here.
Right.
Alright, so we're making a pit stop here in Athlum just to sell some goods. I had mentioned that I had spent all of my 200,000 gold in the Godwood grind, but I have not sold anything that I have harvested during that time. So there's the rough Bogart stones, there's a couple of stones that I got from visiting the Vale of the Gods, and there's also all of the captured monsters. And so you'll see very quickly that we'll have recovered from everything we had invested. There's 55,000 strictly in rough Bogart stones, which you recall is harvested from that low chance dig spot in Numer Mine. There's 230,000 gold from all the captured Godwoods and Spiritwoods. And one thing that I kind of quickly scrolled past, but I did get a piece of Godwood timber during the Godwood grind, and that is needed for a guild task. And so even if you're not going to take the Godwood grind to the extreme that I did, I would suggest fighting them for the 2 guild tasks. You need to take down 12 of them for 1 guild task, and you also need to get a piece of Godwood timber. And so both of those have been accomplished. Okay, so here we met up with Jorgen. We're looking to complete the Amnesia quest. You see that I gave him the sword that we found in the aqueducts, plus I'm giving him 2 other items. And wouldn't you know it, that did not result in Warrior. That actually is going to give me Adventurer. And as soon as I saw it, I just soft resetted. I probably should have referenced a guide at that point. I knew the sword was needed for Warrior. I didn't realize that there was a potential for Adventurer. So I loaded the save, gave him the sword plus 2 different options, and then we unlocked Jorgen Warrior, after which I just went to the guild and added him to the team.
Perhaps new memories await us.
So you saw that I stopped an illusion and picked up a couple of scimitars, and I intend to upgrade them so that Jorgen will request them. But I'm stopping in here because he actually starts with the Daimyo Katana, and that is its own guild task. So if you don't want to hire a soldier to complete the task, you can pick up Warrior Jorgen to complete that. Another option is Glennis. If you add her to your party, she starts with the Daimyo Katana. So having any party member that has that equipped on your team at the time that you reach the guild will satisfy the requirement for that task. And so again, I just remembered that he had it, wanted to make a pit stop in the guild to knock that guild task out. Next, we're going to move on to the Disappearing Knights quest, and it's a combination of both completion of the quest but also to knock out some guild tasks. There's one component left for Iridis's upgrade. You recall that we gathered two of the components in a previous segment, and all that's missing for him now is a piece of meteorite, and then he will upgrade to the Commander's Harpoon. After that, we'll gather the components for the Giga Spear, and the following upgrade is the Lance of Longinus. And so for now, we're going to start this the Disappearing Knights quest. We'll get the meteorite, and I will chime in later on. There's a critical point within this quest where you don't want to make a mistake in relation to Iridis's upgrade. And again, I'll stop in and say something when we get there.
Me?
You can always count
Have you
on me.
never laid eyes on a Servani?
Impressive, huh?
What are you looking at?
Hope it looks all right. You can always count on me.
I don't have a lot of self-confidence.
Come on out! Okay, later.
Alright, so this is the harvest point for Meteorite. Again, it's the last component for Iridus. It's also a spot where you can find Ether Water, which is its own guild task. You need 3 vials of Ether Water, so you can hopefully satisfy both of those requirements from this harvest point.
Come on out! Okay, later.
So I'm saving it in this spot and then starting a new clip because this is the spot where you can potentially get a drop needed for a separate guild task. We're looking for 4 Dark Fiend Talons, and that's for Sword of the Three Realms guild task. They are dropped by the Hypnos in this fight. If you don't get all 4 though, you can get them from other sources. There's another required fight later on. The Harpilia that are in the Aqueducts have the chance of dropping it, but you can get all 4 from this fight, and so since the fight is not that challenging, I may as well just save scum this until I get all 4. It turns out I got all 4 on this first attempt. In fact, I think I got 5 of them. But again, it's 4 Dark Fiend Talons, so this is a spot, required fight. You may as well get them from here if you can.
I think I dropped off first.
Strike at their flank!
Everywhere we go, slime like you are creeping around.
This is just the beginning.
So up ahead there's a Diggs morsel on the ground, the Dakaron morsel, and that'll further increase Mr. Diggs' count by 1. But behind it there's a treasure chest. I'm going to take a moment to just kind of pause and point that treasure chest out in the video. This is a chest that you do not want to open at this point in the quest if you're using Iridis to reach the Lance of Longinus upgrade. Right now he's gathered all of the components necessary to upgrade to the Commander's Harpoon. The following upgrade is the Giga Spear, and in that chest is the Aged Spear, which he will need to upgrade to the Giga Spear. The thing is, it needs to be on his list of components at the time that you open the chest, otherwise he's not going to take one. He'll clone it eventually at a much higher BR, but we don't want to have to wait until that much later in the game in order for him to get those components. And so if you're using him to upgrade to the Lance of Longinus, just return to town, upgrade to the Commander's Harpoon, and then make a quick run through here and open the chest when you see that the item is on his list of components. For now though, it's a separate note, I'm going to engage the Void Intruder. It's not necessary in the PC version of the game. It is an achievement though on both the Xbox and the remastered version, and while it doesn't do any good here, I am going to show that it's possible to take this thing out right now. I did save it though, just to be safe. The fight goes on for a little bit, but it's certainly manageable, and Thunder Breath is still a wicked skill to have to deal with, as you can see.
Wait, somebody took me out? We're counting on you! This one's gonna knock you into next week!
Don't underestimate your foes! need the other one! The other one!
Come on out! Okay, later.
Alright, so I'm saving it here, and I'm going to start a separate clip just so that you don't have to watch me save scumming this killer insect. What I'm looking to get, though, is a component for another guild task. I need one piece of land insecta fluid. You have to capture and split killer insect in order to get that, and as you can see, I did. So when we came back, that was already completed. Now everything is taken care of in this area. We're able to finish up the quest by returning or exiting this dungeon. We'll return to town, and then you'll see that Iridus has upgraded to the commander's harpoon. Immediately we can begin to gather the components necessary for his next upgrade, which is the Giga Spear. We'll take care of that. We need the Aged Spear, which I had just explained is in that treasure chest in the final fortress via the fourth path. He also needs one piece of Royoshan steel and one piece of silver ore. Those can be obtained from the same harvest point at the very end of the Blackdale second entrance dungeon. You recall that that's where I was harvesting Royoshan steel earlier. So we will very quickly advance to the Giga Spear, and after that he'll need just 3 sets of components for the Lance of Longinus, one of which we can get right away, and I'll be showing that here shortly. The rest will have to wait until a little bit later.
Come on out! Okay, later.
Alright, here's the chest that we ignored the first time through. There's the Aged Spear, which Iridus will clone. There's also the Scholarly Band, which is not a bad accessory if you are into using evocations. That's something I'll just keep for Rush to use later. But all I'm showing right now is that sure enough, he did clone the Aged Spear that we got in the chest. Now we can just rush off to the Blackdale second entrance to get the remaining 2 components and upgrade his weapon to the Giga Spear.
Come on out! right. Damn!
Think you can get away with that? Ready to die.
No matter how strong they look, don't let them spook you! Come on, let's kick some egg!
I was only taking a little nap.
Sweet!
There's still plenty of power left in these old bones.
Come on out! Okay, later. All right! Awesome!
Okay, one accidental fight behind us. We reached the harvest point. You see there, we've got the Ryoshi steel and the silver ore, and now Iridus has everything he needs. We can backtrack here, grab the teleporter, return to town, and see that he's upgraded. Alright, as you can see, he's upgraded to the Giga Spear. He has 3 new components necessary now to upgrade to the Lance of Longinus. Primordial Alloy we could pick up right now, which we're going to do over in Newmore Mine from the harvest point in the lower areas where we fought the Godwoods. The Bogart Core we can get from a rare available in Blackdale. The Crimson Ape will hunt for that and split it. It is a guaranteed capture though, so long as it is spawned, it shouldn't be too hard to get that Bogart Core. And then finally the Rock Raider Tails. The earliest we can get that is start of the second half. They'll be dropped by Rock Raiders in Yevlok's Nest.
Come on out! All right! Awesome! Okay, later.
Okay, later.
Impressive, huh?
Alright, so we are going to wrap up this segment by taking on the third of the Melfina Knights quests, the Reviving Legend. This quest chain is a missable quest chain. It's one of those that disappears after you advance too far in the aqueducts, and so I'm going to take care of it now. I would have rather done my grind at Wisdom's Echo here first, but I was challenged along with the inclusion of Jorgen to include Roberto. There's another unit that I don't tend to include, although there's nothing wrong with him. He's an excellent bard candidate, and I've already given my spiel regarding how useful bards are. But in this case, I'm not going to use him as a bard, and so I want to pick him up now while my BR is still low enough to get the full advantage of returning to the Godwoods. I'm going to give him some focus treatment, just like I'm going to with Maddox. Let them both get some personalized development from the Godwoods, and then we'll move on to the true grind, the Wisdom's Echo grind. This fight's not going to be that complicated. Stood by on the first turn. We're already in a great spot to where we can just spam Blackout and just cheese our way through this fight. And that's really the intention here. It's just to hurry on through it. This can be especially challenging if you don't have access to a battlefield clearing ability. Blackout or one of the other Arcana are really your only options. If you have a guest unit ever in a fight like this, the Gabolg is not an option, and neither is any of the summons. The game doesn't allow you to use it if there's a guest unit. You may have noticed that if you've done Wisdom's Echo, that you never get the use of the Gabolg. That's because you have a guest union in tow, and so if you want to get around that, you have to force trigger Blackout, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we'll wrap up this fight. We'll hire Roberto off the clock. I'll do a little bit of focus grinding for both he and Maddox, and when we come back, more than likely I'll just I'll do the Wisdom's Echo grind, but I think before that I will wrap up a couple of other quests that we've been kind of postponing. We'll talk more about that when we return. So enjoy this fight, and I'll see you in the next video.
This is our big chance! Here goes. Smash him from the side. Sweet.
My old age has
Your
stopped.
weakness
Guess I'm
from
not
growing.
senile quite yet.
So I thought I was done with narration, but it turns out I've got a couple comments to make here about the Malfina units that become available after completing Roberto's quest chain. First off, you've got Lucora, which is one of those talented generics that has more than one skill. He starts with invocations and hexes, both are level 6, and he's in the Magus class, so whichever of those two skills you level up first, he'll tip either into the Marauder or the Specialist class. He's essentially a potentially stronger version of Perneth, a little bit more versatility there. Vinery starts with lotions learned up through Eye Cream, which means he can heal right out of the gate. He also starts with the Combat Heater Shield, and if you craft a higher ranked version of the Tower Shield, he will shift over to that line and eventually upgrade to the Shield of the Vanquisher, which is the ultimate shield. Here we've got Neo, who starts with well-developed herbs. Very likely that he'll go Scout. If you focus on his development, say with the Godwood grind, he could become a Guardian. But if you develop his one-handed wield style, he will eventually become an Assassin. And it actually works for him because he does learn a weapon art later on. He learns Holy Wind. And so once you upgrade down the Hybrid line, he could be very useful as an Assassin candidate. And finally, there's Roberto. So I was challenged to include both Jorgen and Roberto in this playthrough, which meant tweaking the team. I had already got a couple other units further along, but I added Roberto because why not? It's been a long time since I've used him. He typically defaults into the Bard class if you just sort of passively use him. He starts with level 7 sword and level 4 potions, and so if you don't want him to become a bard, you have to get at least one level in sword, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get him up to level 8 as quickly as possible using the Godwood grind so that he remains in the monk class. I may either keep him as a monk for the health point bonuses, or I may eventually shift him to Swashbuckler. Again, there's an HP bonus there. It's more than likely the route that I'm going to take with him. And then finally, we're making a pit stop here in Illusion because I still hadn't turned in the Darien quest. If you're looking for a hard-hitting unit that can heal very well, I would certainly suggest adding Darien. Just like I had commented with Gao, who's a well-developed, strong, high HP unit that can heal very well. Darien's definitely worth including I'm just not going to include him. In fact, I rarely include him because I kind of get tired of hearing his voice, to be quite honest. I know that's petty, but so be it. Finally, here with the completion of the Nest of Eagles, the NPC has moved out of the way here in Athlum's Town Square, and you can pick up the Belt of Remembrance if you are waiting to include a later version of Jorgen. We did get the Warrior though, and so that's this item is no longer of any use to us. Just a quick comment that the Remembrance items do not carry over from playthrough to playthrough, and so you are still limited by story progression as far as the different Jorgen variants. And you see I committed here by talking to the recruiter in dismissing some of the units that I no longer have space for. So it is what it is. We've revamped the team. I'm going to, at this point, stock up on reviving components, and off the clock I'm going to return to Numer Mine and do a little bit of focus grinding for both Maddox and Roberto. And when we come back, we'll knock out a couple of quests and then move on to the Wisdom's Echo grind.